All right, it's 9:33 Pacific time here in Bellevue, and we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Mark Franks. I'm Platform Evangelist at Acumatica. I'm your host, along here with Evgeny Afanasyev, and he will be going over part two of this particular webinar, which is Web Services Basics, and the focus will be on OData. Yesterday, we had Samuel cover the REST API, so we recorded that as we're recording this session here, and we should have those recordings available Monday or Tuesday, latest of next week. So you can share those with your colleagues if you wish, and or watch them a second time. And for those people who show up late, they can go back and obviously see what they missed. So without further delay, I'll just hand this over to Evgeny. Evgeny, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for joining. Just a quick note before we actually jump into the matter in OData. I would like to tell that all this course series is based on i300 course, and you may follow the original course on either partner university or open university. For the purpose of these demos, we intentionally deviated from the original course because we wanted to show you some new features, to show you how to work in multi-tenancy environment, and additionally to make some little highlights on the certification related points, so to say. So first of all, we're going to have a quick view and to see where OData has or OData, I mean, it's a holy word, we don't really know how to say it. Huh? Let's stick to OData. So first of all, we'll see where OData will be placed in the whole Acumatica integration possibilities. Then we'll drill a little bit down to check what are the features of OData interface and why it's so special. Then it will be followed by a practical demo when we'll especially going deep down to the all authentication possibilities. We will retrieve the data all possible ways, and then at the end we will create a distributable customization package that you can just give to your customers. After that, we'll go back to theory and to repeat what we just see in demo, and to verify that we've learned everything about the supported parameters. We will wrap it up with a short summary when I would like to highlight some roadmap items, and if you would have some time left, it will be great to have a short Q&A session as well. So let's just hit the road here. Well, as you see on the left side, this is such a chart which is showing all these integration possibilities, spectrum in Acumatica, I mean almost all, right? So let's concentrate on the piece in blue, so those blue entities. Right, so yesterday, for example, we had one of the web services API, contract-based REST API, presented by Samuel, and today we're having OData. As you may notice, this interface is standing a little bit aside from web services APIs, and actually it has really nothing in common with it. It's going particular, it's very special way. Once you may see the capability table on the right here, you will notice that OData is very limited. It's just able to retrieve the data out of Acumatica, right? And knowing more that you only can retrieve actual data records, you can't retrieve, for example, reports and attachment, you would think, well, why do I need such an interface to use? Well, there is something most probably you don't know about this interface, and I'm challenging myself to encourage you to think about implementing OData in your very next solution. So let's go forward. So what actually does Acumatica so special? First of all, it's extremely easy to implement. Most of the your development endeavor will lay in designing of generic inquiry, which you need to use OData interface, right? So since it's easy to implement and it's very lightweight interface, it's also very easy to certify. Since you only can retrieve that data from Acumatica, we only need from you I300 course to be done to be able to submit this certification, because we are sure that you're only going to retrieve data, nothing else, right? So you basically saving a lot of time on learning for this. I mean, we still encourage you to learn more about Acumatica, but in this case, it's just not really needed. Another point here is performance. Using OData is most probably the most performant way of retrieve the flat list of records from Acumatica. There is no way possible you can do it faster and efficient, right? Another point is it's extremely maintainable and stable. I mean, this maintainability and stability, they're going together. Since it's based on generic inquiry, as long as your generic inquiry works, your integration will work. If it's not work, it's not working. It's works. So there's basically no state in between. Generic inquiries, as you maybe know, is based on DAC. So it doesn't really need graph logic and all these extra PQL delegates, which you may kind of notice when you're using other contract-based API, for example. So once it's working, and you would never experience any optimization cannot be performed kind of exception, why it's won't even retrieve, it won't even come to the BQL delegates, right? It's also extremely maintainable. So once you have it working and your generic inquiry is working, we basically guarantee that within the major version, we won't break anything, because we're not changing anything on a DAC structure during the major update. Between the Acumatica versions, only minor interference is needed basically to keep the GI working. So you just remap the stack and it still continue working. Extremely stable, extremely maintainable, very performant, right? So that's a good point. I hope I awaken your interest here. Another thing which you maybe not really know is that the licensing policy and restrictions which apply to the normal, to the contract-based API, for example, are not applicable to OData interface. So these all restrictions of concurrent API users, concurrent API requests, or maximum API requests per minute, they are not applicable. You can just bombard your instance with OData request as you want, and as far as your instance can swallow it, it will be okay. The only restrictions you may face is your virtual hardware or real hardware and the timeouts, which maybe will be needed to execute particular queries, right? So another good point. And last one, but not the least, this one particularly make me the most excited, is finally we are able to use open authentication to authorize ourselves against Acumatica instance via OData interface. Isn't it cool, guys? So, long story short, let's jump to the practice. Here a little bit quick update. Mark, please share the links we prepared. So for those who are participating in this webinar, we created a Acumatica instance, which is available on our test cloud. We prepared a Postman collection as well. and Postman environment. So please feel free to download it in the link which is mentioning SharePoint. And
yeah, just to make it clear to people out there, I posted this in the chat. So if you open up your chat window, you'll see the links. Again, he shared this with me earlier, and I just pasted it in for you. Also have this available on the website as well, just to make sure that you have the links. The other thing that I forgot to mention in the beginning real quick is that if you have any questions, use the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. If you mouse over and then open it, please feel free to ask any questions, and we will answer them either during the session or afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. So all of this starting in Acumatica. So for the purpose of this demo, I've installed a very late version of Acumatica available, and I create a multi-tenant instance. So tenant, which name is company A, is having the data template I100, and company B has the sales demo usual template. So basically there are two different entities here, right? So let's log in. Company A. To easy jump between the instances, the credentials are the same. So right now we are in the company A. You can see it on very much right corner here. So for our data starting with generic inquiry. So let's navigate to generic inquiry screen. And here straight, I would like to point your attention on this little checkbox here, exposed via OData. Once it's checked, your generic inquiry will be automatically straight away available on the via OData interface. So let me see how many generic inquiries we already have built in. Some of them are already exposed. Look, is that great? So let's just select those which are explored. Right. So we have a particular one. How many there? 10 generic inquiries which we are able to use. So let's use a Postman tool to see how we can retrieve the same list. In case of OData, you don't need to log in and log out explicitly. You're doing everything at one request. So to get a list of all available generic inquiries, all what you need is to make a GET request with site name, which is in my case my local, right? /OData/tenant if you have one. And if you'll see in authorization tab, we using a basic authentication. So if you will see, it's just admin and the password will be 123 here, right? So just another to remind you, this particular environment, I mean, not this one, this is i3XX Cloud is available in one of these links. So just feel free to use it, and it will automatically direct you to target to the cloud instance we have for testing purposes. Great. So what's happening here is the username and password getting appended before this request. So it will be basically your login, your password, and then starting with HTTPS and follow the link, right? So it's not maybe a fantastic way to always pass your credentials, right, with this way of authentication. So you basically trusting SSL certificate in this case that your credentials won't be intercepted. So let's see whether this works. And voila. Look, we have all these entities here, all 10. Isn't it great? Okay, so now let's be challenged even more and let's say like, I would like to see what kind of fields in this particular entity. Is it possible? Yes, it is. So for this, we just need to make $sign and metadata after our request. So it's basically very simple authorization request, dollar metadata. And whoa, look. So we have basically here the name of the entity, which is generic inquiry in our case, and particular properties. And let's also specify which are the keys. Isn't it fantastic? And we have the name of a property, which is the field name, and its type. For example, this is definitely a string, and this is the integer, and so on and so forth. Wow, this is great. Well, for now, we know what fields we have in our generic inquiry, so we just don't need that. What is still bothering me is this atom notation, which I really don't like. I'm kind of a JSON guy, so let's see what we can do. By just getting and adding the headers like accept application the JSON and content type application JSON, we can just prettify it into a very much human readable way. Wow, that's great, isn't it? Okay, that's not all. So let's continue to open authentication, which is basically a very new feature available in OData, and it's just started to be supported in 2019 R2. So here again, we need to move to our instance of Acumatica and to go to more items, integration, shuffle menu, connected applications. No, we don't need anything here. Great. So as you may see, we have already one here, but we don't need, we create a new one for the demo purposes, right? If you had already yesterday a chance to observe how Samuel was doing open authentication through with REST API, you maybe noticed that it works pretty cool with this resource owner password credentials, right? So how it works, basically you request your token using actually password and credential to the instance, and you're getting it back, and then using the token for further things. So today, let's go wild. Let's put our paranoia mode to maximum. We say we don't want to pass any credentials to the third-party solution. And as I assume we have a lot of ISV on another end, let me put it another side. We don't want to take any risk of having customer credentials on our application side, right? We don't want to be able to capture it. So is it possible? It is. So let's try to do that. So for this, we will create a connected application here. We make a some kind of creative name for it, client name, which is me, and we add a shared secret. Once we start to be creative. Good. We can also specify when it will be expired. If you specify nothing, it will be never expired. So another quick, another time notice here, once this value is showed, you will never see it again. So please make sure that you would copy it and put it somewhere in Notepad. So now we save. Great. So, okay. Great. So let's see what we can do on the Postman side. So for open authentication, we need exactly the same request. Only thing will be changed is the settings on our authorization tab. We're choosing OAuth type of authentication, and then we see that we have this request header parameter here. Very important. It's mostly standby request URL, and once you have it, you'll never get the issue why it's not working. Okay, so. So now we put our secret here. and go back, save it. And we have our client ID. As you see, there is always, if you have several tenants, we have add and the tenant ID here on the side. And we also need it here. So, great. And we just hit request the token. So now we have this pop-up coming out with this very much unclear exception. What does it mean? So that's most probably mean that we forgot to identify a redirect URL. So if you would see it here, it's a special tab which let us specify the callback URL that we'll awaiting on Acumatica side. So let's see, site name will be this. Please note that everything you're dealing with open authentication require HTTPS protocol, so otherwise it will always ask you for this and not let you further. So, okay, and let's try again. Save it. So that's what we're having now. Look, right now the customer will authorize against Acumatica itself. So we not needed to manage credential, capture credential, or whatsoever. The customer will put their credential into Acumatica itself, right? And Acumatica will give us the token to use it. Isn't it fantastic, guys? So let's reauthorize ourselves. Click sign in. Right, so now we are getting the permission request. Would we really would like to do this? Well, client name, it seems to be very much reasonable for me, so let's do it, yes, hello. Wow, look, so now we get a token, which looks like that. It's also named token, I mean, we are creative, and the token type is bearer. Let's use token. So what's actually happening now? So let's send a request. Sometimes it's not updating straight. So if you would see here, the temporary headers, we've got this particular record, which called key authorization with value bearer, and this something very critical value. What is this value? You may see here, it's exactly the same. So, and I already spoiled the moment, I've sent the send button, and we get this using all authentication. Isn't that great? So let's see what's actually is in our response. So we're seeing the name of the generic inquiry and the URL. Well, they're usually the same, but shall we have any spaces and so on? We would always have it modified into such kind of URL way of thing. So that is the one we would need to use in our request. So let's try one. I personally like this customer contract one. So let's move to it and do the request. The request is the same. Get request of site name OData / tenant / customer or whatever the name of stated in the URL. I'm using this inherit from the parent, which will be the basic authorization for demo purposes and to avoid any kind of issues with tokens. But in real life, please use a more secure way to communicate. So let's see what's happening. Wow, look, this is all the data we have about our customers. Look, here is JV computers and wow, so many of them. Cool. What I don't like is that it's still represented in this XML format. I'm JSON guy, I told you. So instead of specifying the headers here, look, we uncheck them, we're not using them. Let's specify a format which will be taken as a request parameter here as a format equal sign JSON. And wow, look, the magic happened. So now we see it in a very much readable manner. And there are a lot of our customer contacts. It's great. So for the reference, we have several possibilities here. There is a JSON, which that's what you see. The Atom or Atom is the XML, which is by default, unfortunately. And we also have JSON verbose, which also giving you a little bit more information here, Tom. Right. So what's I don't like here is that it's sorted by the customer ID, which is fantastic for computer, but it's horrible for humans, right? We would like to see it in alphabetical order. So let's see what you can do. So with this easy parameter, a simple parameter, $, order by, we can set the sorting upon the field and the direction of the sorting. So we specify order by parameter. Then we say which kind of field we would like to use for our sorting. And then we specify the order, whether it's ascending or descending. In our case, it's ascending. That means it will be alphabetically from A, B, Z. So check it out, whether it will work. Well, isn't that great? So first we're having the ID is 26. That's definitely not the first one. Customer starting with A. Well, that works. That's great. What can we do else? So let's invent a business scenario. So we have a business person whose name John, and John would like to go to the New York State. So he would like to see who he may visit in this time and to acquire some appointments maybe of his customer. So he would like to see whether is any of his customer are living in or residing in the New York State. So to do this, we just specify a filter. It's a filter parameter with field name equal and the field value. Please note that we're using this RESTful syntax for specifying equal and not equal because the equal sign is already used for these get request schemas here, right? So please don't miss it, otherwise your request will be corrupted. And see what we can do. Wow, look, we're starting straight with the same active staffing service. And they all seems to be residing in New York State. And this as well. So it seems to be working for John. That's great. That's great. So how many of them? Well, it's very, very many customers. So he will never call to all of them to ask them to meet. That will be just nightmare. So what will we do? Well, John the businessman, John the smart guy. So he will just use his mailer to send the emails to all his customers who are residing in New York to see whether he can meet them. So we only need basically out of this data set email addresses and customer name to make it like personal looking. So, and you see by adding just $ select and specifying the value in comma separated list of the field names, we just can reduce the amount of data we retrieve to only this which we need. Look, isn't it looking pretty now? Great, so now John can simply send his emails to all. No, he can't. Look, we have some customers who having no email in our system. Well, that's very unfortunate, but we can't just spend our time for this. So let's re-specify our filter parameter to make it a complex filter. So now we specify that we would like to only choose records of our customers who residing in New York State and their email is not equal null. So it's looking like a simple one, but from the other perspective, look, it's really not simple. It's having this equal and not equal. So, cool. Okay. So see whether it works. Wow, it works pretty fine. You see, we see no null emails anymore. I think it's ready to go to our mail system to be sent, right? But another thing is striking John in this case. If we just send all these emails at one go, we'll definitely be blocked as spammers, so we really don't want it. So our way will be is to retrieve the single records or by 2 records and send them piece by piece, right? So that is the case. Our another key parameters coming in play. There is a top parameter and skip parameter. Top parameter will define how many data records we need to retrieve out of the whole data set, and skip parameter will state how many data records we need to skip before we start retrieving. So that's look easy for us. So let's specify top 3 and skip 0. That means we only retrieve 3 emails here. And cool. It's worked fine for us. So let's see where we can retrieve a next 3 out of the set. So please remember them. There is a Alphabet, School Center, Asahi Sun Tours, and we're getting skip 3. Wow, now we're getting a next 3. So they're very much different. Did we miss something? Let's check. So we put top 6 and skip 0 to retrieve first 6 records right now. And voila. So we have all of these, the Asahi Sun Tours, Alphabet School, Denver Boulder Couriers, and so on and so forth. So it works pretty amazing, right? So quick word on the certification. That's actually the pattern we would expect you to use. So whether you using REST API or OData or whatsoever, once you want to retrieve a big data sets like, for example, sales orders, which can be many thousand, please don't forget to use top and skip parameter to page around the data set and to retrieve not more than 5,000 entity at one request. Otherwise, we will have some problems on the certification stage. Right. Isn't that cool? I think John is happy with this. So let's move to another business scenario. For this, check what kind of generic inquiries we still have. So expose and true. Well, modified stock items. That one is a nice one. Let's see what's doing. Whoa. So this is basically a list of some inventory IDs in our stock. And we have a quantity on hands available here. Or for who we can imagine this generic inquiry? Well, it can be inventory management solutions, can be BI solution. It also can be an online shop integration, which using the same stock as the offline outlet. Therefore, we need sometimes to synchronize this data between the actual amounts, what we have on stock, and our integration. Because usually this kind of integration have the storage on their side as well. They're very much independent, right? So you may assume that all the time to retrieve all this data set is just incredibly, someone writing in chat. Okay, good. To retrieve all this data set all the time is extremely hard operation. And imagine you having a really big warehouse where you have thousands and thousands of inventory items. So when nothing gets sold, you retrieve all this information to match it against the database in your solution to realize there is nothing is changed. Well, it's really not efficient way to do it. For this purpose, so to avoid the situation, I would say, we can use last modified date field, right? So this field is available in almost all Acumatica's data access classes and tables, and it's also available on all embedded certified solutions. So once you want to integrate with a certified solution, you just also rely on that there will be this field. So by putting it out, we may filter on it and just catch those items which was modified last. Right. You don't need to, this is field which will be automatically maintained by Acumatica platform. You don't really need to write anything, just use it for reference. So let's see whether we can just retrieve the data from this particular generic inquiry. You see, this is the same last stock items modified generic inquiry. Let's move here. We see here last modified on time. Great. Another point to notice here that right now in 2019 R2, we get rid of these time zones which were usually specified after like +3 or -7 or whatsoever. All these timestamps are in UTC right now, so it's make it very convenient for you, I believe. Right? So this is something that will retrieve all the time, and we want to avoid this. So let's implement a filter which do following. It will only select or choose the items with item status active that we have really, and they're being sold. And we add the parameter that the last modified ONT field value is greater, this GT stands for greater, date time, and then there's a timestamp followed by. So you see, there is this date time, then apostrophe, then this timestamp, and another apostrophe. Please don't make a mistake and make the space here, otherwise it will be very complicated to find. If I did it several times, it was a nightmare. Please take care that there is no space here. So let's try whether it will work. And well, it works fantastically, right? That's a particular request you would like to see on your site if nothing is changed. So you don't need too much gigabytes of data against of each other to realize that nothing has happened. So do you think it didn't work? Let's change something in our data set here. So we're having keyboards, and we just, so it's opening in different, yeah, right. So we just installed 2019 R2 with this fantastic feature from distribution, and now we can finally set up that we don't want to sell half of keyboards and only want to sell them in a whole unit. So let's do save. Well, nothing is actually changed much, right? We just changed something small here. Will it react on it? Well, see, it does. This is particular item that's being changed recently, right? So as you see, I specified, is it today? Yeah, right, it's today. In this is actually last modified time, and that's what I've specified. This was basically a week ago. So all the changes within the last week we would see in this particular data set. In the real life, we expected you to set this timestamp before every and each successful synchronization, right? So you mark the time when you start the transaction to retrieve the data. If the transaction is successful, you're putting it and store it on your site, and then you use it for this parameter. In this case, you only will get the information which is not on your site already, right? So that's how it works. And this is what particularly we're checking as well during the certification, that you're following this scheme of differential data retrieval. So I hope it was a nice demo. And let's just do a quick jump back to our spammer John. You remember the one who was sending emails to the customers? So he liked his idea so much, he wanted to distribute his package to other people. So what he can do for us? Well, you can distribute OData interface. It's available everywhere. Only thing you need is particular generic inquiry, which others don't have. So for this, we're going to customization project, and then we create a one. So just send plus. We're doing something creative. Great. Once you decide to certify your solution, please refer to guidelines, because we are very strict on the project naming to avoid any extra iterations. So just a quick tip, and we going to this project and just see whether we can add this generic inquiry. Just click add, getting the list, and we see this customer contact. That's one we need. Save. Voila, it's here. Good. So we don't even need to publish it. I mean, we can't publish it. It's already in database. So we just export it somewhere to downloads. Project zip. Remember that? Great. We actually can't even remove it from here. We don't need it. So let's now go to company B, which is a very different tenant with a different customization projects. Yeah, and once we would like to swap our tenant here to company B, right here, see company B, put it here, company B, and try to retrieve all our customer contact, select it or not. It will think for a while and then say like, I can't find this generic inquiry, sorry. Well, this is on the status 404 no found. So let's get back to our tenant without this generic inquiry. So let's import this package again from, whoops, you see more than you had to. Go to downloads, see this project zip, click upload. Oh, now we have it in a different tenant. If you open it, you can verify that there is a generic inquiry available, customer contacts. Great. One-to-one naming, that's what we need. So we just publish it. So during the publishing, it will only add the database record. Once you unpublish it, it will still remain in the system. So only way to get rid of this generic inquiry after is to go and manually remove it. So it seems to be that we're ready here. And let's go back to Postman and perform exactly the same update. I didn't do anything extra, as you've seen, right? And strange. Didn't work. I think I just used this. Published. Working great. So we can check whether we have it there. So it was customer. That's strange, it's not here. Why is it not here? I think most probably I already was publishing it once and I was removing for the demo. So to overcome this, it's also happening kind of often. So let's go to our customization project and going to the project inside. Oh, pardon. And we're doing publish with cleanup. So what's happening sometimes, it's still remember that there was such a generic inquiry and it's actually not there anymore, but it's still some keys are persisting in database, so it won't actually putting it. So now we have to have it. Let's check again. So customer. Okay, our customer contacts, but it's here, very much straight. So let's check. Yo, cool, isn't it? We have all of it. I mean, the different data set, of course, because this is a different tenant, but you already can start to spam from a different tenant. Isn't it fantastic? So that's all for the demo today, sir. I hope you was enjoying this one. So let's go and to check again and verify that where we learn all the parameters which are available for data. So first one is select parameter. That means we specify only the fields from the data set we would like to be selected and to get rid of other unnecessary information to reduce the amount of requests, right, the value of it. We have a filter parameter to specify the condition whether we would like to retrieve the record or not. We use order by parameter to the particular field and to specify the order whether we would like to sort it in particular direction. We would like we using top and skip parameters to implement the pagination, right? So top retrieving just first top records, skipping this bit for retrieval. So they usually work together. They also can work by themselves, right? So you may just select always top one. It's very similar to SQL requests. So, and we have also format, which specify the notation you would like your data set to be presented. It might be atom, it might be JSON, and it might be JSON verbose. There is nothing else available, right? You might most probably notice short note here on the side. There's some parameters like links and expand are not available. Well, we can't really expand in a flat list anything, so it's basically not applicable for OData yet. And we're also not having any line count parameters, and unfortunately no functions like mathematical functions or string functions. However, all of this from a side limitations we can basically cover on the phase when we're designing our GI. So we can create a new fields in GI which then we can filter on. So right. So let's wrap it up. The OData is can only retrieve the data, right? So, but it can do it really nice. It's very performant, it's very stable, it's very maintainable. No other and better way to retrieve flat lists you would be able to find within Acumatica API possibilities, right? So the data set is based on generic inquiry, and therefore most of your development endeavor will go maybe in designing of right generic inquiries. For this, please see S130 reporting course, which is available in Open University and a partner university. Don't forget about that we not really restrict from Acumatica licensing point usage of OData. As long as your hardware managing to handle the requests, it will be processed. And finally, yoo-hoo, OAuth is available. So please use it and be secure in this case. a small insight from our roadmap. We are really like OData inside the company ourselves, and we doing a lot to enhance this interface. From what will come anytime soon is that we finally will be able to use OData without generic inquiry. Imagine how cool is that? You just may specify the duck you would like to retrieve in URL itself. So by this, you also will be completely free from these non-performant optimization exceptions, and you won't need to do any customization, most probably, to distribute to generic inquiries. You just can go, right? I mean, there is other things being developed in this things in this scope of OData. So I would really like to think that I've managed to encourage you also to invest and develop something with OData on Acumatica side. So that was most probably all from my side. Please feel free to ask some questions if there are some not answered yet. I'm available.
Okay, in the Q&A, someone was asking about, can you get the metadata in JSON format? I can't remember if you showed that or not.
No, unfortunately not. I've tried it before this practice, and I really don't like it myself, but it's not possible. No, you can specify there the headers, but they will be just useless. No.
Okay. And then Yuri asked in the chat, he missed what the letter T in the date time representation was. I'm not sure the context necessarily.
Well, this I know what that mean. It's meant this particular T was probably in last time modify this T, right? So this is a particular format of writing it in OData. It's nothing coming from us, right? It's also in here. That's how we getting it. Just basically matching it.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, this is
so yeah, that's the date, and then the T is saying after that is
for time.
Right?
For time most probably, yeah. It's a limiter.
Time. Yep. So it's just telling you that the next 00 colon etc. is just time format. And then Sharif asked, what are the performance differences between endpoint GET calls versus the OData exports? Are there any metrics available? And or in other words, is OData faster than endpoint calls?
So for contract-based APIs, we would need to initialize the graph somehow, right? To initialize those views, and OData doesn't need this. With OData, you just basically going straight to ORM level to the DAC level through generic inquiries, of course. I mean, most probably there is some kind of dummy graph will be called, but it's definitely more performant way of retrieving flat lists, right? So when we don't need any like expands. So I'm not aware of any metrics. I think it's possible to do so. Like we also can use generic inquiry also in REST API and call it via REST API, right? So, right. So I'm not aware of the metrics, but it's generally faster. I mean, it should be faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we just got another question from April Reeves. She said, out of the box, are there equivalent data generic inquiries for the default REST endpoints, making it easier to change out calls from the endpoint to an OData call?
All right, it's nice to hear something from April. Hi, April. Okay. So the question was if there is this, some equivalent of default endpoints available. Well, no, they will only have generic inquiries for data right now. So if you would like to build some functionality the same as default endpoint too, I think you will have to create generic inquiries and a lot of generic inquiries. OData, just a quick note here, OData was designed initially to integrate with BI solutions like Power BI and Co, to retrieve very fast substantial amount of data and to manipulate it on the other end, right? So that's basically all its capability coming from.
Great. Yuri keeps asking questions in the chat. Yuri, ask in the future, ask your questions in the Q&A. Yuri asked, and actually Dimitri answered, but just so people on the line who are not necessarily looking in chat, he was asking that does OData make optimization for calls of retrieving multiple items at once? And Dimitri answered as OData always returns flat list, so there's no place to detail optimizations. So, and then Yuri said, you know, optimize equals single SQL request, multiple records instead of multiple SQL requests. And then Dimitri said, since it's GI, it's always a single SQL request. So I think that answers it pretty well.
Okay.
Are there any other questions that anyone has? Please type it in the Q&A. If you think of questions after we end this call in just a moment or two, you can always send me an email, mfranks@acumatica.com. Again, mfranks@acumatica.com, and I will hunt down the answer for you. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. I'm going to stop yours.
Sure.
So I just want to, just so everyone knows, so on the Acumatica.com website, if you go to developers and you see webinar, you click on webinar and you get this screen here. So this is where we have listed all of our developer webinars, and you can see right now, you know, we just have the register today. So Monday or Tuesday, you'll see this change like we do here, and we'll post the actual presentation as we've done with the other, you know, previous presentations that we've done. See, like this. But I'll also include the text for the files or the demo links that both Evgeny and Samuel had presented in their presentations today and yesterday, respectfully. So you can just come back here. I also put it in the chat, but it's pretty simple. You know, just go to our website, hover over developers, and then click on webinars, and you'll get there. So let's see, are there any other questions? Let me just go back. I don't think so. I don't see any. Yep. Okay, so with that, thank you so much, Evgeny, for your presentation. And thank you to all the attendees. Appreciate your time. Hopefully this has been a useful session for you. We will be having other webinars that hopefully you will enjoy in the future, and I'll announce them and send out emails to our list of technical folks out there, our customers, our partners, and so on, and hopefully you'll know. Otherwise, you can go to that webpage and see anything that's coming up in the future, and we'll hope to see you soon. So have a great Halloween here in the U.S. and Canada. I'm not sure if it's celebrated worldwide, but have a great rest of your day and the rest of your week. Take care. Bye-bye.